While I tried to avoid them verbally, it appeared that my presence, physically, annoyed them. They wouldn't walk past me without hitting me. My mom would pour all the chores on me and ask me to finish them at an impossible time. When I don't do so, which is always, she would hit me for it. Barely 5 months after. Scenes revolve, I'd lost a lot of weight and had bruises all over my body. Hi, my name's Penelope. You might be wondering why I'm in front of a police station. Well, my mom just got locked up and I'd come to see her for a conversation. Nope, it's not one that would lead to her coming out soon. I would rather she remains there for the rest of her life. I'm not a bad daughter. In fact, I've been good to her for as long as I can. I'm an only child. My dad worked as the vice president in his father's company, so we were rich. We stayed in a mansion my dad built with his money, and we had cars and everything. I grew up in wealth. My dad loves me, especially. We were practically best friends. My mom loved me too, but I was closer to my dad. They both made me feel comfortable, but I felt more with my dad. I often told him about my worries and he comforted me. However, things took a tragic turn when he suddenly fell ill. At first it was mild and he only had to skip work for a few hours. Rather than leave home at the usual time, he would stay back for 2 to 3 hours and return home earlier than usual. I was forced to ask him what the problem was.
It's nothing serious, Princess. I just need to rest more. I'll be fine and strong before you know it.
His assurance was all I needed. I took his words and hoped for when he'd become better, but he only got worse. Soon he had to be admitted to the hospital, and I knew it was more serious than I knew. I didn't know what it was until I overheard my mom talking to my grandmother over the phone, one day after my dad's admission. My grandparents were in Italy, so they had no idea what was going on. According to my mom, my dad had cancer, and he was at a delicate stage. I didn't fully understand, but from how my mom sounded, I knew it was very serious. That made me sad. When we went to see him at the hospital, he'd gotten so pale. It was so quick, the changes. I cried in his arms, hoping for him to get better very quickly. Unfortunately, my father's health kept deteriorating. The drugs didn't seem to be working, and the doctor said the cancer was spreading very quickly. I saw my mom turn into a crying mess every night, praying for my dad to get better. It was a devastating period for our family. Eventually, after 1 year of suffering and trying different treatments, death took my dad. He died at night while my grandparents were watching him. That was the saddest day of my entire life. I cried until I passed out. When I woke up, the thought of not seeing my dad again registered in my head, and fresh tears rolled down my eyes. My mother looked like she wanted to die with him. She kept asking them to let her go. Time passed by very quickly. His funeral was done, and we had to learn how to live without him. My grandparents and my dad's brother were so kind to us. They put my mom on a monthly salary and took over taking care of me and all my expenses. Life wasn't the same without my dad. I watched my mom become a shadow of herself. She was always crying. If she wasn't sobbing, she had tears in her eyes, waiting to be shed. I tried to be strong for her, even though I was also deeply affected. The house became quiet. My mom rarely talked. Luckily, we had maids, and I was able to have little conversations with them. I patiently waited for when my mom would finally recover from the pain of losing her husband. Time passed, and soon, 2 years had gone by since I lost my dad. My mom was better and was slowly starting to go for outings again. It was a big deal for me, and I was happy. I noticed her always speaking to someone over the phone, and that person always made her laugh and show happiness. I didn't know who it was, but I was grateful to the person for helping my mother out of her depression. Day by day, her smile brightened even more. One day, I approached her to ask about it. I wanted to know if it was a friend of hers, as I felt obligated to thank whoever it was.
It's a friend of mine. Would you like to meet him? He's been asking to meet you, but I didn't know how to tell you about it.
I agreed to meet him. I was so excited. When he came, I wasn't surprised how he was able to make my mom feel better. Sean was so nice and full of good energy. He made me laugh so much with his jokes, and I was immediately connected to him. 2 months later, my mom revealed that she was dating him and asked if he could move in with us. I agreed. Sean was a good person, at least. That's what I thought. The first month was good. He was still nice to me and helped well with my mom. He would take us out to dates and do so many fun things with us. I felt as though my dad sent him to us, and I thought he was an angel. However, things changed after the first month. Sean became a completely different person. Yes, he was still close to my mom, but he began distancing himself from me. I didn't mind at first, but when it got to a stage where he stopped talking to me completely, I had to talk to him. Did I do something to offend you, Sean? You've been avoiding me? Did I do something wrong? I thought he was going to give me a reason, but the reply I got was a slap that sent me to the floor.
Who the hell are you to question me in my house? Huh?
That person wasn't the Sean I knew a month ago. I tried to speak again, but that only worsened it. He slapped me twice and kicked me roughly on my back. Afterward, he left me there in tears. I'd thought my mom would do something about it after I told her, but she only shunned me and asked me out of her sight, claiming that I was trying to lie against Sean because I was jealous of her happiness. It sounded so stupid. I couldn't believe she would say something like that. I was only 13. How could I be jealous of her relationship? Anyway, I tried to avoid them from then on. I only spoke when I was spoken to, and ensured to not get on their nerves. Unfortunately, that didn't work. While I tried to avoid them verbally, it appeared that my presence, physically, annoyed them. They wouldn't walk past me without hitting me. My mom would pour all the chores on me and ask me to finish them at an impossible time. When I don't do so, which is always, she would hit me for it. Barely 5 months after. Scenes revolve, I'd lost a lot of weight and had bruises all over my body. One time, he'd smashed a dish on the floor in anger, very close to my feet. Somehow, some of the pieces met my skin and injured me, making me have bruised feet too. My mom stopped sending me to the hair salon, so my hair was in a bad condition too. I was forced to cut it, regardless of how much I cherished how long it was. The cut was uneven, but I didn't mind. Neither my mom nor Sean even acknowledged it. Mom and Sean turned me into their slave. I had to even mow the lawn, cook for them and serve them and clean the whole house. They began throwing parties in the house, drinking and smoking with dangerous-looking people. I was always scared to leave my room and had to stay longer in school. About 7 months later, when I couldn't hold it in anymore, I visited my uncle and told him about everything. He wanted to go to my mom, but I refused. I didn't want to continue living with her. Without wasting time, he called my grandparents. They were pissed to hear about my mom's behaviors. They immediately arranged for me to relocate to Italy to be with them. I thought my mom would oppose it, but the reverse was the case.
You can take her, I don't give a damn. I would have sold her off or something if y'all had come to take her later. To hell with you, Penelope.
I was hurt and felt betrayed, but there was nothing I could do. I needed my sanity, so I left with my grandparents. For 10 whole years, my mom didn't call me. I heard from my uncle that she was living her life with Sean. It hurt me so much, but I didn't dwell on it for too long. Once I clocked 24, my grandfather passed away. It was sad news for me, as he and my grandmother had acted like my parents. I was so devastated, but I needed to be strong for my grandmother. He was given a proper funeral, then his will was read. He divided his properties between my uncle, I, and my grandmother. Things took a different turn when my uncle gave me 80% of his, as he was wealthy himself and thought I deserved it more. My grandmother gave all of hers to me. I felt so loved. I needed to return to my birth country to take over my grandfather's company. I took my grandmother with me, since I couldn't leave her alone. However, news somehow got to my mom about the inheritance I received, and she found her way to the mansion I lived in with my grandmother. She knelt before us in tears.
I don't know what came over me. I regretted letting you go, Penelope. I still do. I'm your mother and I love you. I would never intentionally throw you out of my life. Your father's death made me mentally unstable that I was just doing so many things wrongly. I already started receiving therapy. I'm trying to be a good mother again.
I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to see her get better and make up for her wrongdoings. So I did. I forgave her. My grandmother also did. She began visiting the house again, and I ensured that I always gave her money whenever she came. However, things took a different turn when I started getting calls from my bank about suspicious withdrawals and spending. I was informed about the purchase of a car, luxury items, and lavish trips on my card. Only then did I realize my card had been stolen and that my mom was a prime suspect. She'd left a lot of debt in the card, She did stop visiting for a month, so I knew she'd use that time to live lavishly with Sean. I couldn't take it. I immediately reported her to the police. The credit card was locked, so she couldn't use it anymore. The next day, she visited me. While I pretended to get her water, I called the police. Barely 20 minutes later, they arrived, and my mom was arrested and put behind bars. I went straight to my dad's house afterward, with more policemen, and threw Sean out of the house, ignoring his pleas. 3 days later, he tried to break into my house at night but got electrocuted by the barbed wires. His scream woke us up. On seeing him on the floor, the police were immediately contacted, and he was taken. At the station, he confessed that my mom had told him to break into my house to steal some money. Apparently, she'd found a place in the library where I kept my money. He was also put behind bars immediately, and my mom's jail term was increased by 5 more years. No matter how much she begged me, I refused to forgive her a second time. I also warned her to never show herself before me if she got out alive, or I was going to send her back to jail. I hope she adheres because I would definitely not go back on my words. An evil mother like her deserves no atom of pity from me. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
My parents refused to let me bring my friends over, but his friends were allowed. Why is he allowed to bring his friends, but I'm not? It's our birthday, not just his. Well, you're a loser, George. Coming 6th makes you a loser. I understand our parents. Hear that, George? You're nothing but a loser. This birthday belongs to your brother, along with the coming ones.
When you finally get your senses back, you can have a birthday celebration.
And that was how I was left out of a birthday celebration with my twin. I was only allowed to take a picture with him. During the cake cutting, he did it with his fellow nerds, and they all took pictures with my parents. Meanwhile, I sat by the corner of the living room, wallowing in my sadness. After the celebration, my brother was allowed to spend the night at a friend's place. After they left, my parents made me clean the whole house, including the dirt my brother and his friends had left behind. My friends had gifts prepared for me. By the time I finished cleaning the whole house, it was nearly midnight. Hello? My name is George, and I'm 29 years old. I was born as a twin. We were both treated equally while we were toddlers, but once we got into junior high school, it changed. I wasn't so interested in education, so I simply did my best. However, my brother seemed obsessed with being a genius, so he took it seriously. My parents noticed the difference between us and immediately diverted their love and attention to my twin brother alone. Whenever we returned home with our results, they would face my twin and praise him for doing well, while I was left to myself. They stopped getting us matching outfits. While my brother wore designers and all, I was made to wear regular clothes. Many times they took him shopping and left me all alone at home. Because my brother was so hell-bent on making them continuously proud of him, he never made friends. At school, he was always alone, facing his books. And at home, he was either on his books or having naps. Me, on the other hand, believed in making friends. My parents thought I was irresponsible for making friends and not being a genius like my brother, even though I always maintained being in the top 5.
You stupid child! Your brother is studying hard in his room and all you can think of is going off to your friend's place?
Are you gonna waste your life with those friends of yours? Or are you going to get back in and start studying? I turned and headed back in. Forcefully, I grabbed my books and began going through them. However, before I could finish the second one, I fell asleep. My mother came in to meet me asleep, and her loud voice woke me up.
Get your lazy ass up, you good-for-nothing! How dare you fall asleep while reading? Are you cursed?
My father came in, hearing her voice, and my mother explained it all to him. I sincerely regret birthing you. Your brother should have been born alone. You don't deserve to be called his twin. Although not reading regularly didn't affect my results, my parents were obsessed with reading. They continued being that way, and it even worsened as we grew up. On our 15th birthday, the cake had only my brother's face on it. My parents refused to let me bring my friends over, but his friends were allowed. Why is he allowed to bring his friends, but I'm not? It's our birthday, not just his. Well, you're a loser, George. Coming 6th makes you a loser. I understand our parents. Hear that, George? You're nothing but a loser. This birthday belongs to your brother, along with the coming ones.
When you finally get your senses back, you can have a birthday celebration.
And that was how I was left out of a birthday celebration with my twin. I was only allowed to take a picture with him. During the cake cutting, he did it with his fellow nerds, and they all took pictures with my parents. Meanwhile, I sat by the corner of the living room, wallowing in my sadness. After the celebration, my brother was allowed to spend the night at a friend's place. After they left, my parents made me clean the whole house, including the dirt my brother and his friends had left behind. My friends had gifts prepared for me. By the time I finished cleaning the whole house, it was nearly midnight. I asked my parents if I could also have a sleepover at my friend's, but they refused, saying it was too late to leave the house. Mind you, my friend's house was only 5 houses away from ours. No matter how much I begged, they refused. I had to return to my room after they threatened to hit me. My brother returned quite late the next day. My father, without complaining, drove my brother to school in his car before heading to work, while I was made to use public transport. 2 months later, my grandfather moved in with us. He's the best gift nature brought to me. Barely a week with us, and he noticed the favoritism going on. One day, while we were having dinner, he brought the issue up. My father was quick to defend himself.
He's just a member of the family to us, Father. Nothing else. He's proven that he doesn't deserve to be part of us.
Yes, Grandpa. Could you believe that George came 6th? Mom and Dad always wanted him to move up to the 2nd position in the top 5, but he worsened the whole issue by coming 6th. He's a loser.
He surely is a loser. We're going to focus only on his twin. He can make his life as useless as he wants. All he knows is to go over with friends and try to cook.
That's the craziest part, Grandfather.
It is. I don't think he's ready for life. So, we're gonna take care of only his brother, our very good son.
I could see the look of surprise in my grandfather's eyes as his fork dropped from his hands.
You're treating your child this badly because he came 6th? Meanwhile, I checked the photo album, and for their 15th birthday celebration, I could only find one of George's pictures. What happened?
Oh, I celebrated it with my friends, Grandpa.
Since George took 6th, we thought we shouldn't celebrate him. The twin who topped the class was our son, his brother. And George isn't your son, right? I'm sorry, but you're all being so unfair to him.
With that, my grandfather stormed out of the dining room. 2 weeks later, it was time for him to leave. But before then, he called me to his room to discuss with him. I wondered what he wanted to talk about, but I heeded his call.
You'll be in college soon. Have you thought about what you'd like your future to be?
I replied that I had, and it was true. I wanted to be a renowned chef. I was always trying to help my mom cook something so I could, at least, know the basics, but she always refused and yelled at me to leave the kitchen. My grandfather asked if I was sure about pursuing that profession, and I responded that I was. Rather than going to college, I'd love to be at a cooking academy.
Your parents will never approve of this. After your graduation, I'm going to take you to start living with me.
I knew my parents would never agree, so you can imagine the joy in my heart when I realized that I'd be able to pursue my dream of being a chef. The months flew by quickly, and I finished my high school education. On our graduation ceremony day, my parents refused to let me attend.
You're going to disgrace us if they don't announce you among the top 5. Stay back at home.
You have no business being there. Your brother is the only one we want to be recognized with, not with a loser like you.
Have fun alone at home, bro. I was sad, but there was nothing I could do. I had a small phone, even though my brother had a huge and expensive one. I texted my friends and told them I won't be able to attend. They were sad, but I assured them that I was fine. I called my grandfather and told him about it. He asked me to get my things ready so that he would come take me the next day. I was tired of having to endure their mistreatment, so I quickly packed all my things in 3 boxes. The moment I finished, I heard loud noises from outside the house. As I walked out to check, I found some hefty men bringing a newly bought car in with decorations around it. I needed no magician to tell me the car was my brother's. When they returned home, it was confirmed that it did belong to my brother. While I stood there and watched, they all celebrated him. The car's key was handed to him, and he was allowed to leave with his friends in the new car. My parents finally walked into the house, not saying a word to me. I decided to speak first. Grandpa asked me to pack my things. He'd be coming down to take me tomorrow.
Well, good for you.
We don't need you here. I'm glad he's taking you away. I was hurt by their words, but I didn't say a word. The next day, as promised, my grandpa came over to the house and took me. I'm taking him to Italy. You both can focus on the twin for all I care, but you'll surely miss him. Miss him? Never. Please take him away.
Yes, take him. No one sees him worthy enough in this house. Matter of fact, I'm tired of seeing his face every day, and I'm sure my husband and son are too.
My grandfather, without exchanging words with them, left the house with me. We relocated to Italy, where he registered me into the best cooking academy. We both got new jobs to help us push through together. While working hard at my job, I channeled the same energy into the academy. Within 2 months, I was regarded as the best student by the top chef herself. I graduated after 3 years, and I was given a position at the academy to be a tutor. I did my job as diligently as I could. I'd found my place, so I ensured to do my best. With the money I made, I was able to relocate my grandfather and I into a better apartment. I also stopped him from working and put him on a monthly salary. After a year, I opened my first restaurant. Once it began doing well, I began my college education to get a degree in marketing. During these years, we heard nothing about my parents and brother. By the time I was done with my college education, I had 2 restaurants which were doing extremely well. I worked just as hard in college and emerged with an outstanding degree. I applied for a job as a marketing manager in a food company, and I was employed easily. I introduced my restaurants to them, and seeing how high I'd pushed it, agreed to partner with me. At age 27, I purchased a mansion and moved in with my grandfather. I took care of him in every way possible and made sure he never lacked anything, including affection. A year ago, I got a call from an unknown caller. I had my PA take care of the call, with the thought that it was from a client, but it turned out to be my twin brother. According to him, my parents' health was failing. He'd sold the house to take care of them, but money was still needed. His friends had abandoned him long ago, and no one was agreeing to help. He was working as a bartender, but it wasn't enough to help them. Own at home, bro. I've heard how rich you are. We're your family. I want you to forget the past and help us. Also, put me in charge of your restaurants. I'm more brilliant than you, and I'll make it even better. He still had his ego and the entitlement my parents had planted in him. Anyway, I refused to help him and told him I wanted nothing to do with them before I hung up. Reaching home, I told my grandfather about it, and he made me promise to not help them. Of course, I had no plan to. A few months later, my brother called again to inform me about the death of my parents. This time, he was a little humble and begging for a job, but I still refused. Go get a job with your perfect brain and stop calling me who you considered nothing but a loser, I warned, and that was the last time I heard from him. I later found out my brother was serving time in jail. From what I hear, the police got a tip that he sold drugs and searched his house. 2 kilos of it was found, and he was taken to jail. Apparently, he started taking drugs and selling it to make ends meet, but that only landed him in jail serves him right. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.